The amount of clarity your character has when speaking can say a lot about that character's personality, background, physical or emotional state, and even more. And while accents have their own level of clarity, there is so much more out there than just the general sound of a character. So stick around and we'll talk all about enunciation. Hello! Welcome back to Character Voice Building with me, Fernando Macias. I'm here to help you create and develop well-rounded character voices. So we are in the localization category of the RCSB, Rounded Character Speech Blueprint. Check it out, the overview video if you haven't checked it out. And we are in the element of enunciation. So what is enunciation? Enunciation is the clarity of pronunciation of words, basically how clear or muddled speech is. Muddled. Now, I put this as part of the localization category because it does form part of that regional or sociological sound, just as musicality does and everything else. So, accent, as we talked about in the last video, is the pronunciation and musicality. It is both elements, pronunciation and musicality. Now, enunciation is the clarity of that pronunciation, and it isn't necessarily bound to that musicality. So it's its own independent thing, but it does form part of that region or that, sociological sector's sound. Now, this is something that could affect way more than just localization, in terms of the personality of the character and much more, but I decided to keep it here in localization since it does form part of that basic sound. So there's an assumption that muddled speech basically comes from not moving your mouth enough, and that is not true. Ventriloquists are a great example. They barely move their mouth, and yet the good ones have impeccable enunciation. Enunciation really has to do with the definition of syllables as well as the definition at the beginning and the end of words. Clear enunciation hits every syllable well, and having that definition at the beginning and end of words makes speech much more intelligible. Muddled enunciation has little distinction between syllables, and the end of words kind of just blend with the start of others, making it very difficult to understand. And now here's the thing. What gives that definition? And it's very simple, one word: consonants. It all boils down to how clearly you enunciate your consonants. And we'll see examples of that later on. Now, I mentioned that enunciation affects much more than just the localization, and I truly believe that's true. It can say so much more about the personality of the character, the emotional state of the character, the physical state of the character, and much more. So here are a few examples. So when it comes to personality, you can say a lot about the rigidity of a character with enunciation. So how uptight or easygoing a character is. So overly clear and very, very clearly enunciated can be seen as uptight, or a very loose enunciation can be seen as easygoing. Absent-mindedness, that's another one, and that's a big mouthful. So somewhat muddled speech can reflect someone's mind just being somewhere else, just preoccupied with something else. In the emotional state, relaxation is a big one. So you don't have a lot of clarity when you're very relaxed, like when you're just couch potatoing happily there, just eating Doritos and watching your favorite show. You're very relaxed and you don't really enunciate a lot. That helps a lot. On the flip side, you have anxiety. So you talk pretty fast, but you enunciate very clearly because you're very hyper aware of everything. Love is another one of those as well. It's closely related to that kind of relaxation. Think about it kind of like pillow talk with your significant other. It can be somewhat muddled, but it is very tender. It's very intimate. It's like seeing face to face, eye to eye, very sweetly. You don't have to say things very loud or too clearly. It's very, very romantic, very tender and intimate. Anger is another one. You could be very loud, but you could also be very clear because you want to make yourself heard and want to get your point across. In terms of physical state, you of course have sobriety, whether you're drunk, high, or sober. You have age. So the enunciation is much more muddled at both extremes of age. And wakefulness is another, just waking up versus being wide awake. Now, enunciation is a good one to apply in moderation. Some muddiness can be good to really add to a character, but too much of it can really make it unintelligible, which might be very detrimental to your performance. Unless the script calls for truly unintelligible speech as part of a joke or a bit, then make sure that what you say still can be understood.
Example 1.
So there's this kind of voice. I imagine it like a big grub who's just there stuck in a tree, who's sad because he hasn't turned into a beetle yet, and he just sits and eats his feelings away. One day he'll become a beetle, but not yet. Because of how muddled speech is, it has to be much slower to get that same sound, but still be somewhat intelligible.
Example 2.
Now there's this kind of voice. I imagine it as this guy living in a cubicle for the rest of his life who wants to climb the corporate ladder. This is the type of guy who researched ways to get ahead in business, and somebody told him that clear speech was the key to success. So he took it and ran with it. Now, of course, he doesn't know the meaning of subtlety, so he just goes around sounding like a silly man. Hello there, Bob. Oh, brother, was that seminar a hoot? No, Phil, it was incredibly boring. Stop it. Ha ha! Whatever you say, I will get you your latte.
Example 3.
Now, for industry examples, I have 4 for you. The first one is going to do with localization, and this is Troy Landry from Swamp People. He has a very, very thick, deep Cajun accent. It is incredibly muddled. It is very, very difficult to understand. And as you can see, it's almost all vowels. There's very little consonants there. There's not a lot of separation between syllables, words, or anything in between. It's just kind of this mud going along. So take a listen.
Before the day is over, I'm going to try to give you singing lessons. It's a rainy day in the bayou. We just want to sing the Cajun rap song. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Then we have something other than localizations, more about the personality, and we have Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter. Her personality is this kind of out there character, so having that muddled speech really plays to that aloofness that Luna Lovegood is supposed to have.
So, you've known someone who's died then?
My mum. She was quite an extraordinary witch, but she did like to experiment, and one day one of her spells went badly wrong. I was 9.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it was rather horrible. I do feel very sad about it sometimes, but I've got Dad.
So on the flip side, we have somebody who's very clear in their enunciation, and that is Principal Mullins from School of Rock. She is the epitome of being uptight, so she plays that very well with enunciating everything very, very clearly.
As you know, it is the most important event of the year. The parents will be scrutinizing our every move, so I find it's best to over-prepare, right? The best defense is a good offense.
And finally, since I talked about ventriloquists at the beginning, here's a clip of Jeff Dunham doing his act. And you can see very, very little mouth movement, but his enunciation is amazing.
Anything else wrong? I don't know. My wife and I couldn't find any place to park anywhere near this stinking joint. And some jerk pulled up in a brand new Mercedes, goes right in the handicapped spot. He got out of the car and there's nothing wrong with him. Don't you hate that? Yeah. So I ran his ass over.
So that was enunciation. I really, really hope this helped you take something as easy to dismiss as just simple clarity of speech and bring it forward into a realm that will allow you to shape a character much more in a much more detailed and three-dimensional way. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this helps you develop your character voices further. Please like and subscribe and check out What the World podcast. It is an improvised comedy show done completely in character, and it's mainly there just as my personal practice, but anybody can listen to it. Perhaps they'll help in understanding how to apply these concepts to specific characters, and hopefully do them on your own. Thanks again, have a great time, be kind, and I'll see you soon.